Welcome to Christmas at Bear's Paw Ranch. I'm Eleanor Burns. In pioneer days, the plum pudding was made weeks ahead and left to age in the pot until Christmas Day. Well, you might not be making plum pudding, but you will want to make a charming country table runner, and it's good for any season. Plus, matching lone pine placemats with branches made from flying geese patches. Join me. There are 4 different units to make in this table runner. The first unit is the pinwheel. Now the pinwheels are in 2 different reds. And then the pine trees. Now if you want to use this as a wall hanging, make sure that both of your tree blocks are standing up. The middle unit is a star with a pinwheel center, and then we have 4 patch on either side of the star. The nice thing about this is that you can do it in any color, any fabric, and use it year-round. It looks great. Now for the pinwheel, start out with 8-inch squares, one red and the other red. Each one of them goes against an 8-inch background square. Just place them right sides together and then draw an X on your square. And so a 1/4-inch seam down one side and down the other. So the distance in between the 2 of them is a 1/2 inch. You knew that. Okay, now they were 8-inch squares. We're going to start out with the 4-inch line lined up along the edge, cut in one direction, keep them together. Ooh, mine just fell apart just a little bit. Cut the other way, and then on both diagonal lines. And we are nearly there for the windmill. Now they started out as 4-inch squares. They are oversized. So we want to square them up to 3.5 inches. Now if you look right here in the center, when I cross the X, all of these little triangles have this stitching right in the end. Well, this was just a nice fresh cut, so I don't need to trim up that side. I'm going to take my triangle square up ruler and put the 3.5-inch line right on the stitches. And then I don't need to trim right here. I want to trim right along this side. That's the outside edge, and those could be a little uneven. So just trim them off, get rid of them, and right here in the corners, trim a 60-degree angle and cut off tips on both sides. Well, there's 8 pieces. There's enough for 2 pinwheels right there. So just take your triangle, set it with the dark on the top, the red on the top, open and press. And they are perfect 3.5-inch squares. I'm just going to move all of these out of the way because I laid out a pinwheel already, and I want to show you how to sew it together because there's such a neat center in it. It lays really flat. Just make sure you've got that swirl in it. I want to sew straight down along here. So I'm going to take the row on the right, flip it to the left, and just stitch right down there. And what is really fun about this patch is that whenever you flip these right sides together, these 2 seams lay in, or they lock in with each other. And so right here up at the tip where I really want them to match, I'm going to drop them together, wiggle them together, really feel, make sure that they're nice and tight against each other, and just stitch right through there. Okay, grab up the second one. I always like to open it like this, look at it, roll it in so that it all lines up. And when you feel it and it's flat, then you know those seams are locked together. Okay, I'm going to take this one, sew it straight on down. I'll show you what it looks like so you don't get alarmed whenever you open yours up and you say, oh my gosh, I screwed up. And this is perfect. Right here you have them locking together and a 1/4 inch there. Perfect. So now take them, flip them right sides together. Don't cut those threads. Push the top seam up and the underneath seam down. And just sew right across here. Get that lined up. Now you're going to be doing 2 different sets of red. You have a total of 4 pinwheels, and actually the very center on the star is a pinwheel as well. I'm just going to hold my stiletto and sew that flat, and I'll show you how you just have this perfect line to stitch right across. Okay, it's perfect right there. Well, if it looks that good on this side, I'm going to have to look at the center. Well, let me look first. Ooh, ah. Now, take this, and when you connected those 2 blocks together, there was a connecting thread, and I'm just going to go in and cut that connecting thread. See if I get it clipped. Okay. And now when you open it up, just take the top seam, vertical seam, push it to the right, and the bottom seam, and just push it to the left. And when you do that, you open up that whole little center, and you press it down, and you create a little pinwheel right in the very center. And so now it's perfectly flat, and the seams all swirl around each other. So whenever you put the 2 blocks together, they're going to lock in place. There's a perfect pinwheel right there. Well, I'm going to get the top and the bottom, and then I'm ready for the star. I am going to make the perkiest points on stars that you have ever seen. Now the center is a pinwheel. It's just like the one that I just made, but you only need to have one. So instead of starting out with an 8-inch square, you start out with 4-inch by 8-inch rectangles. It's the red and the green, right sides together. I just drew a straight line, diagonal lines, cut them apart, squared them up to 3.5 inches, and there it is. Got all of that? Well, the points are from a technique that we call the flying geese patch. Now, I've shown you this before, so I'm going to go quick. Now, you start out with 2 squares, a 7.5-inch square and a 9-inch square, and they are right sides together and centered. I drew a diagonal line, and then I sewed a 1/4-inch seam on both sides of that line. Now, all you do is just take your ruler and your cutter, cut it in half on the diagonal line, and so you have 2. Now, you press the seam towards the large triangle. So just drop it on the pressing mat with the large triangle, set that seam open, press into that large seam. Now this time it is dark because it's star points, but it's sometimes light. Doesn't matter what the color is. It matters if it's the large triangle or not. Okay, take these 2 pieces and place them back, right sides together, background against dark. And you can't match up the seams. You're not supposed to, except you are supposed to match up the outside edges. And once you have the outside edges lined up, then once again, draw another diagonal line and sew a 1/4-inch seam on both sides of that line. Well, I do have some seams here, and I don't want any of those seams turning. So I'm just going to grab my stiletto, hold it on one side, my finger on the other, and underneath, feel stiletto on one side, finger on the other, and just speed right down this star point on one side, turn it around, and sew another 1/4-inch seam right up the other side. If my threads will cooperate with me, that is. Okay, hold that seam down. Don't let it flip on you. Nothing worse than flipped out seams. All right, 1/2 inch in between. Perfect sewing. I am really stuck on my threads today. Let me get them cut off. Now, you can see my stitching. I'm just going to take that diagonal line, cut on it one more time, and open it up and go, oops, I've goofed before. Yeah, that's right. You've got star points here, one on this side, one on this side, and the same on the other piece. So you want the seams to press in opposite directions. So fold your patch and clip to the stitches. And now I can press those seams in opposite directions. Just take the patch, hold up 1/2, press into the star point, into the goose, into the star point, turn it around, lift up the other half, press in there, and when you look on the back side, perfect. Seams going in opposite directions. Now all I have to do is just square up these star points, and I'm going to use the 3x6 geese ruler. And you just take those green lines and slide them right into the seams. Perfect. Okay, hold it down, hold the ruler down. I'm going to separate it in half. So I cut it, separate it, go on one side, trim off. And if you're on the corner of a table, you can actually just walk around the table and trim on all three sides. Now, is that perky or what? Now, out of these pieces, you're going to get your 4 star points. Let's lay out that star. We've got the pinwheel center. We've got the 4 star points. And remember that you touch the star points around that pinwheel. And that's it. Like so. Got some extra ones here. You need to have 3.5-inch background corners to fill in the whole star. Ta-da! Like magic. Now, I want to sew the star together in vertical rows. And so I'm just going to take this row, flip it right sides together, and hopefully it's all going to match. So straight down there. Now the pinwheel was 6.5 inches, and the same for the star points. They're also 6.5 inches, so they're going to line up perfectly. Okay, so right along here, grab up that next one, the pinwheel. Assembly line sew. You don't need to stop and cut your threads. Raise your presser foot, slide that through, and this seam on the pinwheel should match underneath with that star point. And we trimmed to a perfect 1/4 inch on that star point, so we're just going to have a very sharp point. Grab this one up and assembly line sew straight through. Now, all I have is one more vertical row. I'm not going to clip my threads, but I'm just going to lay it down beside the other row, flip it open, look at it, make sure it's right. It's looking good. And I'm just going to do the same thing. Flip this right sides together, sew straight down. And when I go back across the other way, I'm going to press my seams away from the star points, and those seams will lock together. Well, I'm coming. I only have the trees in the forepatch. I am growing a forest of trees. You need to have a total of 12 trees, and so that's actually 3 different sets of the flying geese patches. So I have 3 different greens stacked up here. They are all 7.5-inch squares and the 9-inch background squares. It's just like the star points, only you're reversing your colors. Put the dark right sides together to the background. Draw that diagonal line. Just keep on going until you square up 4 of each one of the colors. So we've got 12 geese in a row. Now, the trunk is from a 2 1/8-inch piece of brown, and then on the sides are 2 2 3/4-inch background strips. You just sew them together, press that seam towards the trunk. Now, all trees in the forest don't grow to the same height, so we're chopping these up into 2 different sizes. First, you need to have 2 that are cut 3.5 inches long. And then the remainder is cut into 2-inch pieces. So that's pretty easy. 3.5 and 2. Okay, now this is going to be 1 column in the block. I'm going to sew 2 of the geese together, 2 of the trees together, and on the bottom put a 3.5 inch. That's a nice tall tree. Now you need to make 2 of these since you're making 2 blocks. Now up above it is just a short little tree. So he needs to have a 2-inch trunk. And that's the way 1 column looks. That's easy. Okay, now let me move these out of the way and I'll show you the second column that goes together with it. You need to have just a short little guy on the bottom, and he has a 2-inch trunk on him. So you can see they're not all the same height there. On the top of him is another one with a 2-inch trunk but 2 geese. Now the way we have to make these all the same height so they fit together in the block is by taking a spacer. This is the 2" by 6.5" spacer at the top. And then whenever that block is all sewn together, this is what it looks like. Those seams line up, they lock together with each other. Should be a 12.5" block just to match the star. Now, if you would like to make a table runner so that people can enjoy it on both sides of the table, you're going to put the peaks of both blocks in towards that star. Let me show you this one. This is such a beautiful one. Got the 2 trees going in towards the star. This is long. This is 67 inches long. Can you imagine? You can have plenty of people at your dining room table with this one. Now, you can also make some little trees, and they're just so cute. This is a placemat. 1.5 inches by 3 inches. And you use the red lines on the ruler for this pine tree. I used the green lines for the star points and the big trees at 3 by 6. But now we have the red lines that are 1.5 inch by 3. And you're going to do the same technique, just smaller squares, small squaring up. This is where the seam would be right along here. But they just look so cute. There's a large background space here so that you can do some holly stencils, perfect for putting your plate right in the center. And the addition of some 4-patch right along the side for your silverware. Let me show you how to make the 4-patch. We are stripping on this last set of techniques. You need to have a red 2.5 inches by 22 inches, 2 of them, 2 green, 2.5 inches, 22 inches. You're just going to flip these 2 sets right sides together and just pedal right down these strips. You know, my father came from Germany when he was just 9 years old. My grandparents brought a lot of the German traditions with them, and my mom picked up 2 of my grandma's cookies. Oh, do I love the Lebkuchens. My grandmother taught my mother to make the Lebkuchen, which is a German gingerbread cookie, and my mom would make it early in December because it had the season. It had nuts in it and had the candied fruit in it and the molasses, and it was a bar cookie. She'd roll it out and then she'd frost it. Well, to flavor it, she'd always put it in a tin with an apple and just set it behind the couch, and it was supposed to wait for our Christmas dinner. Oh, well, of course, I couldn't wait. I had to get in there early and always taking that lid off long before Christmas, sneak into those cookies, have such a good time. I think all the kids did that, don't you? Probably. Okay, now I'm just going to I made 2 sets. I made a set ahead of time. I'm going to take the second set and I'm going to put opposite colors together and just wiggle them into each other. We need to have 9 of them. So I'm just going to take my ruler and cut this into 2.5 inch sections. Okay, right down here on the bottom edge, across the bottom, I have 0 all lined up, have 0 lined up to the left. I'm just going to put my cutter in there, square that off, and then go to 2.5. See how fast you can do it. 5, 7.5. Oh my gosh, I think that Christmas is coming. I've got to get these done. Square them up to 2.5. Okay, now once they're all cut into 2.5 inch pairs, take 3 pairs and set them aside, because these are opened up end to end and sewn together. Let me show you. 2 sets there and the 3rd set. And you just sew 2 sets of 3 singles all together and then press the seams in one direction. And that's for up near each end near the pinwheels, and that works great. So I'm just going to stack those up, put those aside. Now I have some remaining pairs of 4-patch. I'm just going to wiggle those seams in there, get them all lined up, and assembly line sew those together. The second cookie or the pastry that my grandmother taught my mother was stolen. Oh, stolen. It's a yeast bread, And it's, my mom would always make it Christmas Eve and put, nuts. And again, it would be cherries and pineapple, such good stuff. She'd raise it the night before, and Christmas morning, we would all sit down to Stollen at our breakfast. Such a special treat. And we've actually tried to imitate that. My mom doesn't bake much anymore. My sisters and I are trying to make her Stollen. We cannot get that same thing together. Well, I'm assembly line sewing 3 right here, and there's a special technique, opening that seam. You do it also on this 4 patch. So whenever you cut it, you take the top seam and press it to the right, and the bottom seam and press it to the left. And those seams will just open up. Cutest little 4 patch right there. Once you have your 4 patch all sewn together, sew 3 of them together in a row, and then whenever you turn them over from the wrong side, you can still create that 4 patch. Seams are laying flat with each other. And this little set goes on either side of the star. You have 2 sets, a 3/4 patch. Well, the table runner is so fun to do. You can do it in any fabric, but it is perfect for the holidays. Enjoy your table setting. I'm always the hostess at my family's Christmas dinner. Besides, I'm the one that loves to decorate and cook. This is an easy table centerpiece. Plus, you can eat it after Christmas. It's a pyramid of red apples with a pineapple for hospitality on top. Well, getting prepared for Christmas is always a hectic time for me. Just take a peek at how I get ready for Christmas.
It was the night before Christmas, and up at the ranch, will Eleanor ever get done? Is there even a chance? The family is coming. They'll be here by 5. If she keeps this pace up, will she even survive? The quilts are all cut and ready to stitch, but can she remember which fabrics are which? When out on the gravel, she heard a car roar. She looked out the window as the dogs rushed through the door. She was relieved to see it was time for some fun. Judy and Patty are here to help get the job done. They laughed, they talked, and went straight to their work to get it all done without going berserk. Now her mess is gone, and no one would know just how hard and fast she really can sew. The packages were wrapped, and under the tree, everyone smiled as Kathy laughed with glee. A stocking for Orion, a quilt for Grant, and Mother looks great in her new Christmas hat. Bruce got a gold shirt to go with his Harley. Brian's new waders he'll want to use daily. And we heard Elle exclaim as she turned out the light, "Merry Christmas to all, and to all a good night."
You saw the funny hats we were wearing. Well, they came from our Christmas crackers. Now, the Christmas cracker was invented purely by chance by an English baker called Tom Smith. He first wrapped a sweet bonbon with a love message in a tube. And then he introduced a strip of paper impregnated with a compound that would crack when opened. Well, next came the hats and the novelty gifts. Well, they made our holiday table loads of fun. May your family have as much fun celebrating around the dinner table as we do.